Hello everyone and welcome to this LDD mock video where we're going to take a look at my edit of someone else's edit of the Ectomobile from Ghostbusters. Depending on your familiarity with the original model, some changes may be immediately obvious and then some might be not quite so obvious. When I say this is an edit of an edit, what someone did before was they changed the interior and roof rack components ever so slightly to make it look a lot more like the movie and to make it so that fitting all four in was sort of more accurate and much more realistic to how the real millimeter ambulance would be. Now there's some of you who may not quite understand what I just meant by millimeter, and I'll get into that when I show you my other version of this car. But my main changes to this one were the rear fins, which were one stud two forwards, because on the real car the fin starts towards this back window, more towards this middle window, and Lego had it so the fin started right here, so it looked a bit out of proportion. So I moved the fin back. I changed the back ever so slightly because it seemed like they got it a bit upside down, because they had more of a circular bit at the top and then the cheese slope at the bottom, and it kind of looks the opposite way round on the real car. It's a little like the front where it has the big sort of tube-like structures on the bumpers, but Lego seemed to have got that a bit upside down, so I corrected that on this one. Pretty much the entire roof rack is still as the person who originally edited it did it, except I did change a few pieces that didn't exist, such as these 1x2 transparent blue tiles, which originally were the same as this middle piece, which is actually a gold or silver ingot piece, and it's made in light bluish grey, so that middle bit would be possible obviously, but it's not made in transparent blue, so the ends wouldn't be possible. Also, I changed the wheel size to these rather normal looking Lego City fat tired rims, and it's because it's an older car, and older cars did have small rims and big tyres, and I think the original wheels that Lego put on the Ectomobile, they just look super out of proportion. I mean, I know they've got the white in them and they're about the right circumference, but seeing that huge rim on an older looking car, it looked so weird. The main changes are definitely in the front though, where I've utilised the new Nexo Night shield pieces to make the tops of the fenders look a lot more Cadillac-like. And I've also added an extra layer of plate where there's an extra curvature at the front where it exists on the real car, which I'm surprised Lego didn't do. They just sort of omitted this middle bit and it was just the headlights and then straight to the bumper tubes. But adding this little extra plate of thickness makes the front look a whole lot more lifelike and much more realistic to the original Cadillac front end. Like my Dodge Charger, all of the pieces that would normally be chrome on the real car would be chrome on this too if I were to ever build it. I do really want to build this version in real life because obviously I have a very good starting point with the ideas set, so I wouldn't have to buy every individual piece, but all of the chrome pieces would have to be custom ordered and then put on the car as they are. So a good example is these pieces here. These are relatively new and only exist in a few colours, and they most certainly don't exist in light bluish grey yet or chrome, so they would be custom ordered pieces. So moving on to the next model, we have the ambulance version, and as you can see this is painted up how it was when they first drove it up to the fire station. Probably shouldn't say fire station actually, they get in trouble with the Americans. The firehouse, which is really is the right way to say it. But as you can see, it's got all of the sort of patchy areas off the car, and it has the original sirens on it. And going back to what I said earlier about this being based on a millimeter ambulance, basically Millimeter was a company in the 50s that took these very large cars and made hearses and ambulances out of them, and there were not a lot of them made. I think the official numbers on ambulances and hearses for 59 were only, well, I think they were less than 1,000, so there's not a whole lot of them out there. And in the real world, there's actually a lot of controversy among car collectors about people buying classic millimeter ambulances and hearses and turning them into Ectomobiles, because obviously it's a very nice looking car. I'd highly recommend going and looking at pictures of ones that haven't been turned into an Ectomobile, because they do look gorgeous because of that classic 50s design. And really, they're just works of art, and cars nowadays are just so blooming rubbish. It's ridiculous. Anyway, getting back to this, as you'll see here, we have the same wheels as on the other, and I just realised all the chrome work on the Ectomobile one wasn't actually painted chrome, or the chrome colour in LDD, so this is what it would actually look like. And one thing I forgot to point out, on the back windows I've utilised these new quarter tile pieces to make the curvature of the rear window and make it look a lot more like trim rather than just the original round plate which used to be there. The interior of this one was completely stripped and basically made to look more like an ambulance, and without all the tech. This kind of can't be avoided with the wheel being exposed in the middle. I did kind of a quick job on trying to strip the interior to make it look a lot more like an ambulance rather than all of the gear in the Ectomobile, so some alterations could possibly be done to clean up the interior a bit more to make it so that it's all not so obvious, all of the exposed wheel arches and the bits exposed to the outside. Oh, there was actually another bit I forgot to mention on the Ectomobile, is that there is an opening hood. And if we can get the little LDD will cooperate with me, there we go. So is this little engine. The original builder who altered the Ectomobile first did put an engine in it. I edited it slightly for my uses because their original build wasn't quite able to fit with all my changes, so I made a few changes and a little redesign. And this uses a method in one of my really old builds of a minifig scale 70 Monte Carlo, where this middle bit is actually just floating, so where the center of the engine is and the frying pan, which is used as the air filter, that just sits in the middle by gravity and is not actually held in by a stud. And as long as the hood closes alright, which it does hold fine. In my Monte Carlo it holds just fine, so I know that shouldn't be a problem should I make this one in real life, which I would be very interested to make this in real life, because to have both versions, the when they first find it and when they finish it, very nostalgic to own both beta versions and finalized versions. Now the last one we have is the Hearse, which is only slightly changed from the ambulance in that it's not got any of the patches on it, obviously because there was no Hearse in Ghostbusters, so this is basically just a millimeter Hearse, and as such the back window has been blacked out because there is no window on the Hearses of these models in real life. The millimeter Hearses don't have rear windows, as most Hearses don't. They have the rear window filled in. And at the moment it still has the same interior as the ambulance. So again, this is something I can work on to make it more realistic to a real millimeter Hearse. And again, I'd love to build this just because of how it looks. I mean, this would look great in a scene in Lego City or something, just like in a classic car show or at a funeral or whatever. It is such a nice build. It's just nice to look at, and it's a nice shape. I do have to hand it to Lego. They did make a tremendous base for which this car was built on. Obviously, like I said earlier, though, they could have done a few things different on the front with the extra plate down and sort of just making this front look a little more Cadillac-like. It looked much too squished and flat in my opinion, so that's why I tackled the front to make it to look a lot nicer. And again, we've got these Nexo Night Shield pieces. And in the original model, it just looked something along like this. Oh, actually, no, there was the there's the old roof tile pieces on top of the fenders, which, I mean, it kind of follows the fender line of the real car, but not enough that it makes it look presentable in Lego scale. Honestly, the fenders of the Cadillac are flat enough that representing it with a flat tile structure on top is more than enough to build it in that scale. Trying to use a piece which has very obvious angles, it just doesn't really go well with it. So that's it for this look at one of my other LDD models. This isn't so much as a mock as it is just an alteration of an official set, so I won't say mock. So really, the only parts of it which are a mock are the bits that I've changed, but it's still original enough to be classed as just an alteration of the set. If you haven't done so already, I suggest maybe going and look at my 1969 Dodge Charger mock, which will be on the screen now for you to collect. And that one is a mock by me, and completely a mock because it was completely scratch built. So let me know how you feel about this, and let me know how you feel about the Charger. Thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you in the next video.